Karibu or welcome. I'm Man Masharia in Nairobi, Kenya, and this is Africa Matters. In just 2 months, deadly flash floods have killed hundreds of people and close to 200,000 Kenyans have been left homeless. The military has now been mobilized to evacuate those at risk as East African countries brace themselves for exceptionally heavy rains forecast in May. Close to 500,000 people in Kenya, Tanzania and Burundi have literally been uprooted from their homes by floods and landslides since March. Climate experts have linked the torrential rains to the El Nino weather phenomenon that's left a trail of destruction in its wake. Let's take a closer look.
In Tanzania, hundreds of people have lost their lives, scores have been injured and hundreds of thousands displaced. Rains have caused Lake Tanganyika in Burundi to hit a record height not seen in 60 years, prompting authorities to raise the protection wall, which was almost submerged. And even though Rwanda and Uganda have also been affected, the worst-hit countries are Tanzania and Kenya.
The floods have converted streets to rivers and swept through people's homes, forcing them to seek shelter in schools and on higher ground. I spoke to some of them who are still searching for their loved ones in Mai Mahiu, Kenya's Rift Valley. In the wake of a devastating dam burst, communities in the Kenyan town of Mai Mahiu are left grappling with the aftermath. Homes destroyed, families displaced, lives forever altered. David has lost almost everything to the floods. His arm is injured and his home reduced to rubble.
At the moment, we haven't received any help, but they've helped us. They've brought us to where we are now. They've taken us to school. That's where we're living now. Now we don't know what the other plans they have are. They haven't told us, but we would ask them to help us. And right now, you can see that all my belongings have been carried away by the water. I have nothing.
Veronica never got a chance to say goodbye to her brother.
I feel bad because even I was the last person that I spoke to him as I was telling him not to stand, to lay down by the bed, but he's probably gone and gone forever.
Veronica herself narrowly escaped the waters thanks to the heroic efforts of rescuers who risked their lives to save hers. As they struggle to come to terms with their loss, they find solace in the support of counselors.
It's a new case every day that most of them that have survived, yes, they have come in terms that I survived, but they are still not in terms that I've lost my loved ones. So we are trying to help them, being that there are some of them who have not found the bodies, but we are still believing that the bodies will be found.
And the ordeal is far from over. Forecasters predict that the ongoing rains will persist for days to come. The Kenyan government is being criticized for being unprepared and too slow in its response to the deadly floods. But let's hear more from Dr. Philip Omi, senior scientist at IGAD, who joins me here in Nairobi. So many thanks, Dr. Philip Omi, for joining us on TRT World Africa Matters. I'll start by asking, what kind of phenomenon are we experiencing today?
Thank you. Whatever we are experiencing today is a normal occurrence. It's only that it is enhanced. And when we say it is enhanced, it is more than usual because of the changes that we have all along advocated for changes in climate. So what happens is that we have a factor that is causing rainfall, what we call technically as intertropical convergence zone. This is a low pressure zone that moves with the movement of the sun. So what causes rain? When winds from the south encounters wind from the north, where they meet, there is rising. That rising is what causes rainfall, and that band where rainfall is formed is what we call ITCZ. Intertropical convergence zone. So whatever is happening now is the same phenomenon, but in Eastern Africa, Tanzania, Burundi, and Kenya, we have the Rift Valley that is interfering with the ITCZ. So it makes the ITCZ to have a north-south arm as opposed to east-west as the sun goes up and down. So that arm that is north-south is what has come over from Tanzania, following the highlands to the eastern islands of Kenya. It is called meridional arm of the ITCZ. So it is enhanced, and a lot of rainfall now falls along that line, and that is what we are witnessing currently.
We've seen the numbers. We've seen there's so many Kenyans out here, Mukuru kwa Jenga, different countries, Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, experiencing these floods. Could the situation have been, an instant in Kenya, could the situation have been managed differently, given that the Kenya Meteorological Department had given an early warning last year that the rains would hit the country?
The phenomenon we are experiencing today is not new. It has been there in time, since time immemorial. We have the rainfall coming to our region such a time. We call it the long rain season of March, April, May. And as I'd said, it follows the movement of the sun. As the sun moves from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, wherever the sun is, it causes a low. That is where the winds meet and rise up to form clouds and then rain. So that band is called intertropical convergence zone. Apparently for our region, because of the Rift Valley and other mountains, Mount Kenya, Mount Elgon, we are having mountains. So this mountain is interfering with the west-east arm of the ITCZ. You know, as the sun comes, the low band is west-east. But when it comes to East Africa, the highlands, the Rift Valley, interfere with that east-west. So it becomes north-south at some point. So that north-south winds coming from the Atlantic Ocean, Congo Basin, meets with the wind carrying moisture from Indian Ocean. Where they meet, it will rise up, form clouds and rainfall. So this time what has happened is more activity happening along that zonal arm. That's why we see most of the eastern part of the highlands, Tanzania, Burundi, this side is really wet. It is because of the meridional arm of the intertropical convergence zone. We work with the Kenya Meteorological Department closely. We are part of Kenya Met. Before any forecast is given, we sit together with Kenya and all other IGAD member countries. Then the forecast issued is a joint forecast. Then what Kenya Met Department does is to go back and tailor it towards the country. So if you look at the forecast that we gave on in February, around the 20th of February, it is exactly what has come to pass. You look at the region, the picture is painted green, meaning that it's going to be very wet. You look at the Kenya map that Kenya Met Department downscale, it is green. So as far as early warning is concerned, we have done our part. Now the bit that is now wanting is the early action. We usually expected that early warning should elicit early action. But it looks like early action was not properly managed, and this is why we are having many of the casualties that we can see today.
Okay, you've mentioned something about early warning, and this is where we've told people to move to higher grounds. What do we, in terms of moving to higher ground, where do we expect these people to go to?
Absolutely. When you are told today that your house is going to fall down today, do you continue staying in that house? No. You do mitigation measures. You move from your house to the neighbor's house, or you do something that will not make that thing spoil your house. So when such a warning is given, we would expect that governments, not only Kenya, but Tanzania, Burundi, all the governments take action. In our warning, we don't just give a warning. Today, we give what we call forecast-based. We also do anticipatory action. So we say that this is what is going to happen, and we expect this to happen. Can we behave this way? For example, we keep on, you look at our focus and the decision-making bullet, we recommend that people who are staying along the waterway should move away. Go to the city, all the drainages should be cleared. So we give a warning and we give the possible impacts and what is supposed to be done. So a good government will simply just heed this and then take initiative, plus other things that the government can do to avert such kind of impacts. I know you cannot just let people move to higher grounds, because higher ground is also owned by other people. You must have put mechanisms to prepare the people who own the higher grounds. Look, floods are coming, we want these people to come here temporarily, then they'll move out. And we know also that people have the habit that when they are taken to a place, they want to own the place. So these are kind of the things that government need to put into place so that there are no conflicts. because of trying to help the vulnerable part of the community.
Many thanks, Dr. Philip Omi, for making time for this interview and also for explaining in breaking it down for what's happening in our countries. And we thank you for taking the time. We do appreciate it. To Ghana now, where environmentalists are warning that deforestation in some major forest reserves, including the Atewa forest, could contribute to climate change. That's because they've been earmarked for intense mining and logging, despite some of them being on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's or IUCN Red List. Rawalesinga Mam reports from Atewa in southeastern Ghana.
Experts estimate that gold mining and timber harvesting have destroyed more than 80% of the country's forest, including major biodiversity areas. They warn that rainforests are disappearing at a faster rate than in any other country. Environmentalists say Ghana's legislation does little to protect the forest cover, and that's making their fight to protect the ecosystem difficult.
Parliament has passed what you call LI 2462, which is supposed to be the Protection of Forest Reserves Act. But what it actually does is allows virtually unfettered access into our forest reserves, including globally significant biodiversity areas. So if you look at Atewa Forest, for instance, you can go there for mining and for logging if the president says it in writing that is the national interest. So if we are interested in forest conservation, would anybody in its right mind who is interested in forest conservation pass LI 2462? I think not.
The over 23,000 hectare Atewa Range Forest Reserve is home to rare and animal plant species which are now under threat. Indigenous people say all 57 traditional communities around the forest are feeling the impact of the destruction. 3 major rivers, including over 150 smaller ones, supplying water to many parts of the country, have been badly affected. And the agriculture calendar has changed drastically, affecting food production.
Even within this community, there are 6 different rivers that takes its source from the Atewa forest that we use in the community. Right now, because of these activities, all the rivers are spoiled. We depend on the rain for our farming and all other activities that we do. And so if the rain pattern changes as a result of the destruction of the forest, our livelihood, our personal livelihoods will change. But we have to begin looking for different things that we can do.
Residents here say they feel threatened, but the destruction is far from over as it occurs at night. The Atewa Range Forest Reserve is part of the Upper Guinea Forest ecoregion, stretching from the east of Senegal to the Dahomey Gap in Togo and Benin. It is a key biodiversity hotspot, a major carbon sink, and home to critically endangered and threatened species listed on the International Union for Conservation of Nature's Red List. Environmentalists and non-governmental organizations have joined hands to take the government to court over a $2 billion exploration bauxite mining deal with China. It allows mining the Atewa forest in exchange for infrastructure projects that include rails, roads, and bridge networks. The government insists it has initiated a nationwide tree planting exercise to regain the country's lost forest cover. However, environmentalists and climate activists say it's a waste of taxpayers' money.
One tree planted, about 1 million trees destroyed. The trees planted cannot be up to what has been destroyed. They can't match it at all. The destruction is too large and it's too heavy.
And there are fears that if the government continues to sell off more nature reserves for mining, it could soon affect weather patterns and food supplies. Rollin Sikamam, Africa Matters, Atewa Range Forest Reserve, Southern Ghana.
Well, in Senegal, people are expressing discontent in a different way. Depleted fish stocks and soaring living costs are forcing thousands to flee their country. But those journeys can be dangerous and don't always end up in success, with a high rate of Senegalese nationals being denied asylum abroad, as Yarendik reports.
Like many Senegalese, fisherman Biran Mbai and his friend Omar Sek didn't feel they had much choice when they squeezed onto a boat and set off into the Atlantic Ocean. The destination was the Canary Islands, a Spanish archipelago of West Africa that has seen a surge in migration over the last couple of years. Despite the cramped conditions, spirits were initially high, but as their journey progressed, they ran out of water, and food was scarce. Then they started dying one by one.
We only had biscuits left. We had one package a day and couldn't even eat properly because it's dry and needed water. You couldn't even spit. We also drank seawater, which was very hard to drink, and that's what killed a lot of people.
Omar Sek was among the more than 6,000 people who lost their lives while pursuing a brighter future in Europe last year, according to rights group Walking Border. Mbai helped drop his body into the sea and took his ring as a keepsake. But even with all he endured, he says he'd do it all again.
If I saw a boat again today, I would leave again. We all have our hopes at sea, and there's nothing left at sea. Today you work, and tomorrow you don't. We work a whole season to have nothing. Well, you have your family to take care of. That's why I won't give up. I have to go back.
Small-scale fishing has long been a mainstay of Senegal's economy and its communities along the Atlantic coast. But overfishing, industrial competition, and the impacts of climate change are taking their toll. So the lure of promised economic security is very strong, especially for the fishing community.
Most fish stocks are now overexploited, and this has an impact on those involved in fishing, because these are the people who make their living from this activity. They are now fishing at a loss, investing and no longer managing to have access to the resource. They are no longer managing to catch enough fish to feed themselves and the people of West Africa.
Mbai and 38 of his fellow travelers were lucky enough to be rescued, but thousands more are being buried at sea as they search for a better life. Yara Dinch, Africa Matters.
Staying in West Africa, we head to Niger, where just weeks after the military junta revoked a military agreement with the U.S. and the presence of its troops in the country, the U.S. began discussions with the country to keep its troops at its base in Agadez. But the talks appear to have stalled, and there are growing concerns from ordinary Nigerians to expel U.S. troops from their country like they did with the French. As Rahul Radhakrishnan reports from the Nigerian capital of Niamey, this is also ushering new alliances in the region.
It could be mistaken for a concert, but under the midday Sahel sun, hundreds of Nigerian students have come out to affirm their country's new identity.
Today's Niger is a Niger where the Nigerian decide the country's future. The Niger of today is a Niger of the people. The Niger of today is not anymore a Niger led by a leader who is a minion of the West, who is cornered to making agreements that is then imposed on the people.
Francophone West Africa has seen a series of regime changes and radical shifts in policy recently. French troops were expelled from Niger last year, and now they're demanding US troops get out as well. The US has long seen Niger as a regional ally in its fight against terror groups in the region and operates a military base and a $100 million drone base in the sub-Saharan desert. But Niamey's pivot from its traditional Western allies is spearheaded by the country's governing military council.
These protests and speakers are certainly speaking in support of the military junta that came into power last July in a coup. But the sense of pride over here is truly palpable. However, at the same time, with the military junta in power, they are saying that they do not want any foreign military presence over here.
There's concern overseas of Russia's growing influence in Niger and West Africa. Moscow has already provided its new ally military equipment and trainers, while a West African alliance prepares itself to fight a wave of insecurity and terrorism from Daesh and Al-Qaeda-linked groups in the Sahel region.
We're here with the Students' Union to show support to the military regimes in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger. We're showing our support for them to first kick out all foreign military that is not ours, that is remaining in our country. We would like to work exclusively with our own military.
Protesters tell us they don't hold any grudges against anyone. But they say that after years of being exploited, they feel like they finally have a voice in their country's affairs.
What we are doing for you. It is for you that we are fighting, because Niger needs you. But you need to be prepared. We want you to eventually take the country's hand after us. That's why we are following you step by step. Be united, because if you are not united, our efforts will not succeed.
Expressing national pride is part of Niger's new identity. Many say that here on out, whatever the country's successes are, will be of their own making, and that it began with expressing discontent with the way things were for decades. Rahul Radhakrishnan, Africa Matters, Niamey, Niger.
Staying here in Nairobi, we visit a former rugby player who has reinvented himself from the sports field into an online chef. Despite battling a mental health condition for years, he now produces online cooking videos that have brought him both a huge following and some solace. Grace Kuriakanja brings us this story.
Pillow with soft garlic naan and creamy butter chicken. Ripe tomatoes, roughly chopped, done.
Dennis Ombachi, alias the roaming chef's signature phrase. Couple that with his culinary skills and he's gone viral with millions of online followers. That's 2.3 million on TikTok and 1.4 million on Instagram to be exact.
Let's go cook.
Dennis was originally fated for scoring the winning try that took Kenya's rugby sevens team to the Rio 2016 Olympics. But despite becoming a national hero, things weren't quite right.
I was good in sports, I was successful, but outside there, you know, when the stadium lights are off, I'm like, my life is a bit empty, so I need something else to fill it. Yeah, that's how my love with food started.
That love propelled him to become the 2022 Best African TikTok Content Creator.
Yeah, I decided to make them short, snappy, and focus more on the mechanics of cooking.
Dennis has battled depression for years and has been hospitalized several times, where he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He decided to share his plight publicly in 2021.
I will urge, anyone who's maybe walked the journey to come out, because you never know who you're motivating. You need to end the stigma about such conditions, because at the end of the day, it's just like diabetes, maybe diabetes of the brain. The same way a diabetic has to take insulin from time to time, you have to take your meds from time to time.
It's just to let the onions cook.
Besides filming videos, he stages culinary events with tie-ins in food brands, supermarkets and embassies, among others. He also plans to open a restaurant as a legacy for his children.
This is me, this is my journey, this is my story. It's part of my story, it's what makes me different. And yeah, I just channeled that dark energy into something else. Yeah, and I've never been more productive in my life than I'm in this particular phase I am right now.
And that's also adding flavor to his life and his favorite Kenyan cuisine. And we're done. Grace Kuriakanja, Africa Matters.
And finally this week, we explore Essaouira. The city stands out as one of Morocco's major commercial ports and an exceptional example of a late 18th century fortified town. It was also once the country's diplomatic capital. Let's take a closer look. That's our show this week. Let us know what you think about the stories you've seen. Share your ideas and feedback. You can find us on X and on YouTube by searching TRT World Africa Matters. Thanks for watching, and it's Kwaheri from me and Masheria here in Kenya's capital, Nairobi.